Hey everyone. Rounding out these additional study designs, just got done talking about multiple pretesting, which, if you, I don't know many people that do that. I haven't seen it done a lot in studies that have been published. Uh, there may be some conditions in which it's appropriate and like standard to do, but most of the time, as we've talked about in class, people understand pretest uh, issues, but it's more an issue of, hey, we'll take in stride the drawbacks of pre-testing, but we need that baseline assessment above all else, and people will live with the drawbacks. But in some situations, maybe you want to really understand everything that's happening with pre-testing, so multiple pre-testing would make sense. But wrapping up this conversation on additional study designs, I'm on slide 9 now. The developmental research designs, cross-sectional designs, they are used extensively in psychological science. In fact, there's a few of you that we have had discussions with one another regarding some type of cross sectional design for your research proposal. So think of it as like if you if you chopped a tree in half, and you just look at the cross section and all those cool rings and everything. A cross section of society is one in which you just take a look right then of how a population or a sample looks at a particular time and you want to detect differences. So, for example, let's say you wanted to determine the difference in racial attitudes between young adults in their early 20s and more seasoned adults that are in their early 60s. There's a separation of 40 years there. And let's say that you found that there is a difference in racial attitudes. So maybe the older group harbors a little bit more prejudice than the younger group does. If that's the case, then it's tempting to go the next step and go, oh, as people get older, they develop more prejudice. And you need to be careful about that with a cross sectional design because you're just taking a snapshot of people's attitudes right now. You don't have information about what your attitudes are going to be in 40 years, and you don't have information about the older group's attitudes 40 years ago. So you just have to take it as a cross section, like a snapshot in time. These are the differences between these groups, and to know that making any kind of statement of, well, this is how the natural progression of life occurs, you have to be careful about doing that. So just restrict yourself to the types of information you have based on the design. Longitudinal designs, though, will give you that information. So if I took 20 early 20s college students in 1960, 1970, and I took their attitudes, and then 40 years later, I take their attitudes again, same people, then that's a longitudinal design, and that's the same group that's been measured at different points in time, and that is the way we can get information of change across one's lifetime. Longitudinal designs are awesome for that. They don't occur very often, and it's because of all the logistics involved in tracking people literally for decades. I've heard of some longitudinal designs that run for 50 years. I mean, it's crazy and awesome. You have real problems with regard to personnel. Uh, People are going to come and go. Some people may pass away literally if the longitudinal design is so long. So you need to have continuity of personnel so that you can keep the project going. And then also the participants as well. You have to keep track of them, keep in touch with them, and so on. But when the longitudinal studies are done, they're awesome. They give great information. It's just due to the logistics, they're not done a whole lot. But when they are, they're really nice. And they can spin off publications for years at each measurement point. They're really cool. Finally, cohort designs. A cohort is basically a group of people that follows another group of people in some kind of regular turnover situation, like college. So every fall, we have a new incoming class of freshmen, and they're called cohorts. So there's going to be a fall 2020 cohort that follows the fall 2019 cohort that we had last semester. So cohort designs would work in educational psych, and the belief is that one cohort is really similar to the one next to it. You would flip flop treatments accordingly to see change.